This is the Transforming Anxiety Podcast with mindfulness teacher Kelly Hanlon McCormick. And today is episode number 278, Emotional Load. My intention for this conversation is that we wake up to more of the invisible work that's built into our hours, days, and weeks. That we are aware of all the information and opinions and life that's coming at us, and that we recognize there's a price to pay for it, that it's not an easy come, easy go info stream. Welcome in. It's the Transforming Anxiety Podcast, episode number 278, Emotional Load. I'm so glad you're here. Hey there, welcome in today, and Happy New Year. We made it to 2025. How about that? We are absolutely buried in snow and ice here in Kansas City. So it feels like we're going to be doing a very slow transition back to work and school and routine and normalcy. But I got to tell you, it's also been kind of fun, honestly, to have this huge storm right on the heels of the holidays. I hope you're doing well. I hope that you feel somewhat rested, relaxed, and that wherever and whenever you are listening to this, that this one is helpful for you. So right before the holidays, I published the first podcast release in a while, and I'm feeling really good. I heard from a lot of you while I was gone and over the holidays that you had missed the pod, that you wanted more, and I had missed you. And yeah, it's just feeling really good to be back. I started prepping for this episode right after I finished the last one, even with the holidays and stuff in there, and I feel momentum just pulling me forward. I have some good ideas for us coming up in 2025. I have some more author interview ideas. Those are always fun. And I've been thinking about this for a while. I want to do a Teach the Teacher series where I interview some of my teachers, some of my mentors, and bring those voices and those lessons to you. And of course, more of this kind of thing. You and I just riffing and exploring some different topics and teachings together. Okay, so a while back, I did an episode on mental load, right? Where we talked about how it's not hard to do something like, say, cook dinner, but that it does require a whole bunch of mental gymnastics, like, what are we going to have for dinner? And I need to get to the grocery store by this date because I don't have time tomorrow to do it. And we have to have dinner ready for this kid by 5:30 p.m. because of whatever practice. And this other kid won't be back until 6:30 p.m. because of a study group. And I need to get everybody dropped off and picked up. And also, I think I need to get the laundry out of the washing machine. And have we walked the dog today? Right? Like that is mental load. Making dinner, not all that hard, but making sure everything can happen so that dinner can happen, that is the part that's really exhausting, and it takes a lot of mental sorting, figuring, and processing at times. That is the mental load part. Mental load is about logistics, and it's usually to-do list oriented, right? Things you can spreadsheet, things you can check off as you go along. It is a lot, but it also usually feels somewhat quantifiable. You know what I mean? Like that's the mental load part. So today, and as pretty much as soon as that episode was coming out of my mouth, I wanted to talk about something related but different, and that is emotional load. So emotional load is similar to mental load in the sense that it is the invisible weight that comes along with whatever we're doing in life. But it's not that mental part, that analytical or intellectual part. It's the feelings part, because they're both there, right? We have to sort out the logistics of whatever we're doing. The dinner, the party, the holidays, the work, the daily running of a household. There's schedules, there's timetables, there's errands and chores, yes. But then there's this other huge part that is arguably even more overlooked than the mental load, and that's the emotional toll it takes. How much does it cost you emotionally? How do you feel before, during, and after? Does it energize you? Does it deplete you? Is it neutral to you emotionally? This is what I want to explore with you today. And I know coming off of the holidays, getting started with a new year, and getting everyone going again after a few weeks off, where things feel a little like, what day is it, right? That there's some heavy emotional load going around. I feel it. I see it around me in friends and family. I'm hearing about it from students already this year. There's the letdown, right? And there's the startup. Here we go again. Okay, so I used the dinner example earlier. Got to get to the store, time things right, make sure everyone is where they need to be at different times, places, feeding all the people. The logistics and the timeline of that. The mental load. So let's stick with that totally ordinary and everyday example, but let's talk about the emotional load piece. Because again, it's one thing to execute logistics and to plow through a schedule when you're feeling good. When things are running smoothly and the people are in a good mood, everyone's pretty well cooperating. Maybe you're well rested. Maybe you had an easy work day. There wasn't any traffic. Maybe you shared a solid belly laugh with your partner and the dog is just being so damn cute. Like, how did you get so lucky, right? That's one thing. It makes the mental load palatable, at least at times, when the machine is running according to plan and all the people are being the best versions of themselves. But what about when things come off the rails a bit? Like, let's say you are feeling an ongoing undercurrent of confusion because it seems like you and a friend have grown apart, but you have no idea what happened. Did something happen, right? Like, did you say something? Did you do something? You don't know, but you do know there's this void in your social life. There's this void in your calendar. There's this void in your heart because this friend isn't reaching out anymore. This friend isn't responding to your invites. You're hurting over it. Maybe your younger kid is struggling a bit at school. They can't seem to find their place in the world. And is it because they're a tween? Is this like a legit serious thing? What's going on? Maybe your older kids' friends have started driving, like they're driving cars now. And so you worry, right? You trust them, you love them, but you worry because they're driving vehicles. How and why are they old enough to drive automobiles? I don't understand this. Maybe work has been feeling a little lately, right? You just aren't vibing with it. You aren't as into it the way you used to be. Is this middle age? Is this because you're tired all the time and you feel like you're losing your edge? Why are you tired all the time, by the way, right? Is that middle age? Maybe you and your partner are like two ships in the night. You cohabitate, but you haven't really talked or laughed together for days or weeks. Maybe you're worried about a friend whose mom is terminally ill. Maybe you're thinking about one of your kids' friends who just got dumped by their boyfriend. Maybe you're wondering about the latest headlines and breaking news. Like, seriously, what is going on in the world? Okay, so you get it. This is kind of general emotional load. This is the ongoing internal chatter of thoughts that create big feelings that are constantly and continuously vibrating through you, which you can either try and ignore or, and this is where it always ends up, you wind up having to spend some amount of time listening to, feeling, understanding, and processing those feelings, which is typically no small amount of work and not something that magically happens on autopilot in the background of your life. So that's one example of emotional load. Another example of emotional load is when it's more acute, like when it's right in the moment. Like, here's a silly example. We'll do a couple of examples because this one's fun, but it's a little silly, but it also proves the point, I think. Have you watched the show Shining Vale on Netflix? I don't know if this one has been super, super popular. It's my current show. I don't know why. It seemed right for after the holidays. Courtney Cox, Greg Kinnear. Is she losing her mind? Is the house haunted? I don't know yet. But she's a writer. She works from home. She writes in the attic and she grapples with the teens and their new, potentially haunted house and the dog and all the things. And he works in the city at a big corporate job. So one day he's home from work and he's just bored or something, and she's finally in the flow. She's writing and it's all just clicking. And he comes up to the attic to tell her that he's going to go to the farmer's market to go to a juice bar. And listen, in this scene, she is not nice to him at all. I just want to caveat this with that. But also, it's so relatable because she kind of loses her mind. And she's like, listen, if I'm up here, if you hear me typing or talking to myself or pacing or whatever, assume that I'm working and do not come up here. Because, she's saying, when she gets interrupted, it's not the 3-minute interruption that's the problem. It's that whatever it is, right? A kid she has to worry about, or something that needs her attention, or someone who wants her attention, it's that the time and energy and emotional load of handling the interruption and then changing gears and shaking that off and getting back to work, that is expensive. It's hard to do. It's not a switch that she can flip. She can't just get right back to it, get right back to work, get right back to writing. She has to pause and exhale and shake all that off and then try to get back in the zone, right? The thoughts and the feelings and the flow that she was in so that she can create and produce and write again. And it's hard. It's energetically and emotionally expensive. And her point, that again, she doesn't make very kindly to her husband, Greg Kinnear, the well-intentioned but kind of dumb Terry, is that the emotional load of that interruption is too much for her to bear while she's working. So, she perhaps could have communicated in a more clear and kind way, please respect that I'm working. Don't give me a 2-hour, emotionally expensive load to bear for a seemingly innocuous 2-minute question about whether I want juice from the farmer's market. I kind of recommend the show, though. I'm not too far into it, but I'm digging it. It's creepy, it's kind of funny, it's sassy, and if you are a perimenopausal work-from-home mom of teens, I don't know. Kind of strangely, there are some things that feel just a little bit relatable. Much of it's just hilarious Hollywood nonsense. But anyway, if you're snowed in this week or this winter, give it a whirl. Shining Veil. It's on Netflix. Okay, back to emotional load. Much like mental load, it's not the interruptions that are hard, or that having kids, or working, or being close to your family and friends, or having dreams or desires or goals is hard or inherently difficult. I guess having kids is kind of difficult. You know what I mean? It's all the feelings that come along with that. It's when you hear a bit of news and you think, my goodness, how does that feel? How are the people in that news story feeling? Do you think about this? Like, the reason it can be so trying to be plugged into current events in the news cycle is because of the emotional load of it all. You can't just hear a tidbit on the news or read something online and think, oh, okay, that's happening. You think about the tragedy or the anger or the change or the uncertainty that's involved. You think about how the lottery winner feels and what they'll do, how their life will change. You think about the families and the friends and victims of violence, like what just happened in New Orleans, all the things that continue to happen around the world. And you think about and feel the heaviness of it. You think about the new year and how many people are experiencing firsts, right? First year of holidays and birthdays and anniversaries without a loved one. First year of a job. First year with a baby. First year with a puppy. First year of an empty nest. First year in a new city or a new state or a new country. You think about all of that when you hear something or read something or happen by something, and then you feel it. Now, I know you're not feeling every single thing, sure. We have to become somewhat immune to the feelings of everyday news articles or every story or headline, because otherwise we just bleed out, right? We would just spend all day, every day processing how it feels to feel all the feelings of every situation we become aware of. But, particularly for those of you who are highly sensitive, who are empathic, who are deeply compassionate people, the emotional load of moving about the world is heavy. It's a lot. And it's something worth discussing, because something I think we're looking around going, wait a second, why can't I get with the program? Why does this seem sad or tricky? Why does this bug me to no end? Well, emotional load. That's why. Things don't happen in a vacuum, right? Things don't happen out there. We aren't blissfully unaffected by the happenings and goings on of the world. And I don't think we want to be. Truly, I don't think we want to reach a state of emotional immunity where we don't feel what it feels like to be interconnected with the whole of humanity. I think we want to experience the highs and lows of what's happening around us to an extent. I think we want to be plugged in, but not yanked around, if that makes sense. Meaning, I don't think we want to erase emotional load or avoid it outright. But I do think the more we are aware that it's a thing, that we carry the emotional weight and emotional profusion of what's happening in life, our lives, and the world around us, if we know that we are subject to some amount of emotional load, we can take care of ourselves around it. We don't have to judge ourselves for not always being chipper or easygoing or quick to get on with the day. Right? We don't have to beat ourselves up for moving more slowly after we hear heavy news or read something disturbing. We don't have to expect that we or the people around us are going to move on robot-like when things are difficult or sad or uncertain. We can make a little space. We can make a little allowance for the emotional load that we and the people around us are carrying. Now, I know that I personally tend to be a little on the more end of feeling the emotional load. I have certainly witnessed people who are either dealing with something big in their lives or are living in some sort of somewhat personal, uncertain time or something, or they can hear something tragic and they can kind of shrug it off and seem to pretty easily just move on with their day. That is not me. I am not good at hearing something big and then being like, okay, yeah, that happened. And what sounds good for dinner? I know, like I said, that I tend towards the more end of the spectrum of the emotional load. I'm wired in a way like that strong Enneagram 4 wing in me that means my feelings are big. The emotional load is heavy. And some of you know this to be true about yourselves too. That big news that makes you want to weep or hug someone or just lay down on the floor with the dog and stare into the eyes of a completely unconditionally loving being. Some of you are a bit more adept with compartmentalizing that. And I don't say that in a bad way, right? Some of you are even just looking at something and saying, and knowing, that's not mine, right? I don't have to feel that one all the way through. And you can just keep going through the day. Now, I've certainly had moments of that, sure, but by and large, the emotional load for me personally is pretty heavy. And I think this is the piece that's helpful to be aware of, to know how burdensome the emotions can get and what you're likely to be in for, meaning here's what it will likely cost if and when I get knocked off course. Sometimes we can't help it. Right? We get news, we read something, we hear something, and bam, we're all caught up in the emotional load of it. Other times, we can opt in or out. Or rather, we can choose to opt in, or we can choose to take care of ourselves and not belly up to the rabbit hole to begin with. Like, you don't have to scour the news. You don't have to gossip with the other moms. You don't have to engage in social media feeds that you know are going to be emotionally heavy lifting for you. We cannot control the external world, no, but we can control, to an extent, what we expose ourselves to, what we purposefully let in for no good reason. And that is the part that is super helpful to understand and stay aware of and act on for yourself. No more of that, well, I know this doesn't work for me, but I do it anyway. Right? That's nonsense. And I can say stuff like that because it's January. And we're all here for doing things in new and better and smarter ways, right? We're all up for new strong starts and all that kind of fun. We'll have to talk about it differently come spring. But for now, we're going to say, no, thank you. I'm going to be careful and mindful and thoughtful about what I take in because I know the emotional load around certain things is heavy. Okay, I think that's a good place to leave it for today. I like to keep these kind of short. I don't know about you, but there are whole podcasts that I miss out on because they're just too damn long. It's too much, right? So I will keep making these short and sweet because that's how I like it. Emotional load, mental load, and now emotional load. And now 2025 and snowstorms. Here we go. You ready? Let's do this. We can do it together. All right. That's it for today. I will see you next week at the same time, same place for more transforming anxiety. And until then, please take care. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for doing this work alongside me. Thank you for sharing this with your friends and your family, anyone who, could use the support and the guidance, who could use these teachings and practices. Thank you for sharing your stories with me, telling me about your experiences and asking your questions. I'm here with you. Let's do this together. Transforming anxiety.